Hi, if you can hear me, you can just put it into the chat and please be on mute. Second thing is, I hope you can see my screen right now. I will just check if my internet speed is good. Okay, I don't have this fast command line utility installed. What I would do is I'll just go to the my browser
Other, can
and
you please use our Prep 45 background?
okay, this is just 10 minutes thing. I will do it later. Is that fine?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, now, if I just need to check my internet speed, I just need to go to fast.com. And you can also check your speed if you are connected good so that we do not have any issues. And if you feel there is any issues, you can always, uh, you know, leave this session and then join back again. Most of the time it happens. And if you are joining from browser, please, clear your cookies and then rejoin. So yeah, let's get into today's topic. So today's topic is all about the introduction about DevOps, right? So we are going to talk about DevOps, and we before going into the DevOps, right? We need to understand what's the history behind it. So if you see that the software industry, right? It was started somewhere around 1960s, right? 1960s, or you can say 1950s, right? So what was the software delivery life cycle, we were following SDLC, right? Software delivery life cycle. How was the software delivery happening at that moment, right? So most of the stuff was like, you had a waterfall way, you called it as waterfall model. Okay, and it was working fine for everyone at that moment in 1960s, 1950s. And what was the model around? It was about like, first we will gather requirements. Okay, so you will gather this requirements from your clients. Okay, gather requirement, and then you would design or maybe plan how you are going to go about the project, and then you would design a solution. Okay, these are your tech architects coming into the picture, so they will be designing it, and then you would get into implementation stuff, or you can call it as coding. And once the coding was done, then you would go to the testing. Okay, testing stuff, you would have your quality analyst and testers who will be testing, and then you would be deploying it, right? And once deployed, maybe now after the deployment has been done, you would do some kind of maintenance, because it can happen like at first you would get only 1 lakh users coming to your websites, right? But as your website gains popularity, it will go to the 10 lakh. Now when you have 10 lakh users coming onto your website, that means maybe you had only one server, okay, which was like a 2 GB RAM, 2 GB RAM, and some CPU, let's say 2 core CPU or whatever. Like, let's give that an arbitrary value here, 2 CPU, okay. But then because from 1 to 10 lakh, then you might have to increase the number of servers, right? Because you understand, or maybe change the size of this particular server, maybe get some bigger server. Now this was good, but it has some caveats. Okay, I will talk about that, like what are the caveats in this. So given that I have already shown you that this is a waterfall model, the problem here is it's like a waterfall, right? Like if you are, let's say, having a 1 month dedicated for getting the requirements, right? You are having extensively meetings with your clients to gather the requirement. So this is the requirement gathering phase. And then in the design is like, another 2 months, right? Spent here designing the solution. And then implementation would take, like, say, the coding stuff would take 6 months. Okay. And then your testing phase might take, because testing, you have to do a rigorous testing, right? Before deploying it and delivering the software, you have to do many safety checks, and you have to make sure that no bug are going inside the code. So you would spend, let's say, 4 months here, right? Now after 4 months, then you would deploy it, right? And now you can see that if, for let's say, in the coding time or at the time when you are in the testing phase, right? You get some new requirements coming in from the client. Now you would not be able to accommodate it, right? Why? Because you would have to again go to this requirement gathering phase, then the design phase, then the coding, then the testing, right? So this is not something which is agile. Agile means, what does agile means? Agile means to be adapt and move quickly. So waterfall model was not agile. So there were some people who gathered and said that, rather than following this waterfall model, which does not allow us to adapt quickly to the changing requirements from the businesses, we have to go another way. We have to, redefine our software delivery lifecycle. And that is where they came up with the, agile way of doing stuff, right? So in this agile, when was this agile, introduced? So you can always go to your browser, okay? And let me bring a browser tab inside the screen sharing, okay? So you have this agile manifesto, okay, available. So this agile manifesto was actually, I think it was introduced around 2000, agile manifesto. Let me check if Wikipedia has something for this. Yeah, when was the agile? So it's in early 2001, and 17 developers came in. These are the 17 developers, and out of which this is Martin Fowler, because Martin Fowler current company, right? So he's a like chief scientist or technology scientist, you can say, at working at ThoughtWorks. I have been in ThoughtWorks, so I know him. So when I was working with ThoughtWorks, so this was a person who actually was there when this agile manifesto was being written, right? So in 2001, around 2001, these many developers came in and said that we have to go another route. We cannot go with the waterfall model, right? So these are the 12 guiding principles of the agile manifesto. But the main, I will not go to the whole 12 things, right? Like I will just talk about what is the gist of it. The gist of it, that the highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. So it's not like that, we have to follow the waterfall model and the customer comes in after 6 months and he says that, he need to integrate some feature, and you say that no, we are already in the testing phase, so we cannot include your new changing requirements. It's like agile says, okay, you have these changing requirements, we can always incorporate that as well. Okay, so this is how the software delivery lifecycle moved from waterfall to agile, and mostly people are now following agile. Okay, now let's understand how does the agile works. Okay, so rather than having this waterfall model that I showed, we don't have this waterfall model now. Okay, you don't have this waterfall model now. What you have is an agile way. So you would have a planning phase. Definitely, you would have a requirement gathering phase first. Okay, so you would gather some requirement, then you would do some planning. Okay, plan, then design, and then you would be coding it, the implementation part, testing. So you would have testing, and then you would have your deployment coming in. Okay, deploy. Now all this cycle, right? And then again back to the requirement gathering. So this cycle, you would say, okay, once after deployment, what am I requiring again? So first of all, you are not requiring when you are doing the first iteration of the agile. So agile works in the iteration. So iteration is like repeating. What does iteration means? To repeat some process again and again. So you have this agile way, okay, to basically deliver your software, and you are not going to deliver everything in this first iteration, like full-fledged application. Maybe what you would get out of this is the most viable product. Let's say for an e-commerce site, right? The most viable product is first to just make sure the product catalog is available, and people, if they want to purchase it, they can always go for cash on delivery. It need not happen in the first cut of the e-commerce site, that you need the advanced payment options like pay later or credit line or credit card or debit card or UPI. Or maybe in the MVP you can say that because most people are dealing with either cash on delivery, and if you are in India, people are going with the UPI payments, right? So you might say that, okay, the MVP for your application in the first iteration would be to get the product catalog, like e-commerce product catalog, and the payment options like cash on delivery and the UPI, and then definitely a delivery mechanism has to be implemented. You can always rely on some other delivery services like FedEx or some other one. Like you don't have to implement the your own delivery app right now. Maybe you can just, anyone who wants to check for the delivery tracking the order, you can always redirect them to the FedEx site. Okay, so this is the first iteration, and now understand, because this is first iteration, right? Just a second. Yeah. So this was the first iteration which I have shown, right? uh, this iteration. I'm not pointing every phases here. This was the first iteration. Now this first iteration, right? It could be, let's say, 2 months. Why? Because most of the things you have to set from scratch. So once you have done the deployment, okay. Once you have done the deployment, you again want to enter into the planning phase. So that would mean that you would enter into the second iteration. Okay. So it would mean that whatever you have deployed and you are actually able to see how your users are using the system. So it is the second iteration that you are going into the planning phase. So whatever you get the insights from the first iteration after 2 months, you would get into the planning for the next iteration, and then the circle goes on. And at the time of deployment, once you have done deployment, you would again fetch this into the third iteration. So you would always keep on building your websites in an incremental fashion. And if there are any new features coming in, right? Let's say once you have deployed some feature one here, right? Let's say in the first iteration you deployed feature first, which was how to, this was a feature, let's say feature one, which was like track the track order, right? And what was happening in the track order? It was actually forwarding the request to another third party, let's say any delivery solution that the business was using. They were actually transferring the uh, uh, customer payload, or whatever you can say, like the clients, when you were visiting their website and you wanted to open the track order, they were redirecting you to the fedex.com. Okay, so earlier this was happening. Now the business might come and say that, what we delivered in the first iteration, the feature one, track order, we don't want it to go to the fedex.com. We have to make sure the customers do not leave our website, and rather than actually forwarding them to fedex.com, why not get the information from the fedex.com about the order, using the order ID, and display it in our own application itself. So what you have seen, that the changing requirements, you can always change these requirements, and then you can incorporate these in the planning phase, right? So it means that in the planning phase, right, in the planning phase, you have the flexibility. Okay, what is that flexibility? So you have the flexibility that either you can go with the new feature request. So there would be some new features. Okay, new features, you would be getting some new features, or you can say that you want some bug fixes as well to go along, because there could be some bugs that you encountered with the features earlier deployed, and you want some bug fixes. Now this new feature, either it could be like a brand new feature, like maybe after the product catalog is there, maybe you want people to be just a second. So the brand new feature would be like uh, allow for ratings, allow for feedbacks on product, allow for reviews. So it could be a brand new a feature, right? So a feature request could be a brand new feature. Okay, brand new, which is like creating, giving some ratings to the products, let's say 5-star rating or whatever, 4-star rating, whatever you want to enable, or 10-star rating. And another could be like modifications or enhancement, you can say. Okay, you can have the modifications or some enhancements that you want to need for your earlier deployed features, like what I have already told, right? Like maybe rather than, sending the users or the customers to a different FedEx page, you would have them, in your application itself, right? You would get those details in your application itself. So that is the two features you can have, two kinds of features. And then you have this bug fixes, and you know very well bug fixes why it is needed. So let's say if you have implemented some feature like product catalog, but it happens that for some products it is not displaying the images properly. So you need to fix those bug fixes. So you can always incorporate these bug fixes and feature requests, okay, in every iteration. So in the first iteration, let's say this is the I1, this is taking you 2 months, okay, and out of this, right, you after the deployment you would have this monitoring and monitoring and the feedback phase, like where you would be monitoring your application, how is it performing and how the users are using, and this would feed into the planning phase of the I2, okay, if the iteration 2 planning phase, okay, and this circle will keep on continuing, and you would always become basically good at uh, every iteration, because you have set up most of the things in this iteration, right, first month, and the second iteration could be 2 months, right? And then because the team is getting the hang of this agile way and most of the things are already known, like the tech stacks, the tech decisions and the architecture have been taken care in the initial two iteration, the next iteration could be very very fast paced, which could be like either you moved into the 1 month iteration, or I have seen some companies like, I think Quora.com. So Quora.com goes for, I think, every week deployment. So in every week, they are able to deploy something new, some new features in their application. So this can like, iteration three. And then as the team is becoming mature with this agile process, you can have something kind of 1 or 2 week iteration, right? So you are able to gather the requirement. So like whole planning, requirement gathering, coding, I'm not talking about all the phases now here. It's just like you are able to do all this in 1 or 2 weeks. And now you would keep on I4, I5, I6. So this is the agile way of doing stuff. Now, yeah, agile is good, but then there is a problem with agile. I will tell you what. So in agile, you would always have this notion where a developer, okay, a dev is there, okay, he wants to ship in new code, right? There is so already some features were deployed, okay, and this is a ops person who is managing the production server, okay. So there were some three features, in the iteration one. So in iteration one, there were three features, feature one, two, and three. Okay, three features came in, and the production person also, like the ops person who is handling the production machines, has deployed your changes. Fine, but because that again the iteration two would be coming in, right? The dev is like, okay, he is going to push in his new features, right? And then there could be some couple of bug fixes as well. But let's talk about brand new features here. So feature four, feature five. Okay, these are the two features that is going into iteration two. Now the ops person, once he has actually pushed your changes here, it can happen your feature four and feature five can break what was earlier deployed, like the feature one or feature two. So because you had a feature five which was like rating system, okay, and you made some changes which actually you know uh, messed up with feature three. Feature three was something related to payments. Okay, you understand, right? It's a high priority for a business to enable the payments, and rating is not so much mission critical, right? So because you wanted to enhance some, give some new features, because of your new features, the earlier thing got messed up, and then the ops person would say that things are not working fine here, and you would say, but things are working fine at my place, right? In my machine. But the problem is the ops person cannot, start serving the production request from your server, right? Like, so he would be saying that mostly it is something to do with your, code or the artifact that you have given me to basically publish onto the production server. And you would be like, maybe something issue with the machine. Maybe some earlier the machine had some binaries and tools installed, but now it doesn't have, because somebody would have run some command, and because of that this is messed up. The machine state is already messed up. Maybe some files are deleted that was not meant to. Now this blame game would keep on continuing, right? In this agile world, like dev would say that it's not my fault, and the ops would say that it's not my fault. And that is where we have come. Like, why not, rather than keeping these people in the silos, right? Where the dev would only just give some handover, some jar file or some executable file to run on to the production, along with some release steps. Definitely there are some release steps to be performed, maybe some migration or database migration, or some maybe some new libraries that are installed in this particular jar or needed. Maybe these release steps are also given to the ops person and this jar file. uh, so rather than giving this, right, like, and having two separate teams, why not bring these two people close together and have it called, like, like, keep the devs and ops people in the same team. And that is what the DevOps is. So DevOps is not a tool. DevOps is not a job role. DevOps is a methodology to implement agile. Because when we said agile, it was very good, rosy, like, okay, we will be able to achieve agile. But to achieve agile, you have to have these mindset shift. Okay, that to achieve agile, we have to keep everyone who is involved in for the delivery of the software as a part of same team. You would not have a team like, okay, there are some teams who are developers. Okay, there's a dev team, this is a testing team, and then this is a ops team, right? And it's like all miscommunications happening at every stages, right? Everyone, right? You would have played this game where I don't know what the game name is like, you communicate something in somebody's ear, whisper somebody's ear, then the other person has to whisper in somebody else's ear, and then you see the message was something distorted along the chain, and the last person who would tell you the what was communicated was something different from the source. So rather than having these three people, or any, like, you can have also project managers, right, who are getting the requiring gathering the requirements from the clients, having these people in different sets. Why not do one thing? Let's build a team, right, along with everyone. So have your dev, your QAs or your testers, your ops person, your project manager, all as a part of same team, and they will be interacting with the particular business entity, which would be your client, right? Let's say for us it could be flipkart.com or it could be amazon.com, right? Let's say we are actually have to create application which is, let's say, amazon.com. So you can have you know a team which is dedicated for one application. And I would get into details later when I will cover advanced topics. I will talk about microservices as well. It can happen that your team is not only coupled to one particular client, it would be serving multiple clients. But the thing here is that if people are working together on some stuff, right? If I am working on some particular application or some uh, you know tool, okay, some website, or it could be some command line utility that I'm going to give it to my client. It's like people who are involved in this whole process, right, from gathering the requirement. You have seen in the waterfall model, right, like you had the planning, the requirement gather, like the requirement gathering phase, then planning, then design, then implementation. So everyone who is involved at any stage, they should be part of the same team, rather than that after 2 months it is gone to the testing and the testers would do whatever they feel like doing, however they would test. No, it would even mean that when a request is coming in, right, like, so feature request is coming in, all the people, all the interested parties would get along, right? QA, devs, and ops, they will decide, like, okay, what is needed to implement this feature. the QA will also discuss like how would I will be testing this feature. The ops would say because we are going to implement this feature, and if we are expecting because of this feature we will get 10x request. That means you have to implement the uh, this particular feature in such a way which will allow me to basically spawn 10 you know machines, and it should work you know seamlessly there. Why? Because when dev is developing, he is only working on his own one machine, right? But maybe when you go on production, you have 10 concurrent, servers running, serving the same request. So maybe the ops person would have also some say. And based on that, because if we are 10, 10x servers are needed, maybe the PM would also communicate back this to the client saying that, we might need to think about the cost, because if you are thinking just we'll implement the feature and it will work out like a charm, no, we have to think about the cost that we are going to put on the infrastructure, right? So this is all DevOps, right? If you have any questions you can put it into the chat. Other than that, I think this is all good about the DevOps you know uh, introduction. And in the next part, we'll see what are the stages in DevOps. So we have seen the stages in, Agile. You can, I can do a kind of one-to-one mapping, like what are the stages in DevOps as well. And we will see how DevOps is the way to get your agile thing done. And this DevOps, right? So this DevOps is something very new, I would say. So you have seen like, the agile was being discussed in 2001. If I talk about DevOps history, I think Atlassian has a better, they have something, just a second, DevOps. So rather than going for the Wikipedia, I would, yeah, you have AWSamazon.com as well talking about DevOps, but Atlassian is a better, I think it is very good, like what is DevOps and how does DevOps works. And this is a DevOps life cycle. We'll get into this later, but yeah, just wanted to talk about that, the DevOps principles, right? So history of DevOps, it is not very, I would say old. Uh, so what does it say? Let me check. Yeah. So the DevOps movement started to, come into 2000 and 2008, which would be like 2022. We are in 23 minus 2007, right? So 16 years back. And I would say this was like only early adopters were getting this, right? But the actual buzzword came into 2012 to 2015. And that, why that? Because in 2015, right? 2015, this Kubernetes tools was introduced. Kubernetes. We'll get into that, what is Kubernetes, but just understand that if you have come across this word called Kubernetes, okay, and this was implemented by Google. So let's say, when was the launch date for this? So it was like mid 2014. So you can see that it's just like 2014 or 15, you can say. It's like just 8 years. And this was the time when Kubernetes, because people were seeing that we need to implement DevOps, but it was the early adopters that can go there, right? Like the big firms. And then once the big firms went into that, the small companies also went there. Why? Because after seeing the big companies getting the benefits of doing DevOps, they also want to move into the DevOps. And because they knew that, it will work out for them. Now, the question here is why you should be learning about DevOps, right? Why is it important for you? Because understand, like everyone is moving towards DevOps. And if you go and check into Naukri.com or any job portal, like say if you go onto a LinkedIn as well, and you check for DevOps engineer, has become a highly paid job. Why? Because there is a serious tech gap. And as you have seen, right, that it's just last 8 years it has got that buzz. And you can see that there's a huge tech gap. And already there is, I think, I'm not global, there's a marketing insights. So this is a place where they actually, put like they predict like how things are going to move. Let me check. So you can see, right? DevOps market revenue to hit by 2028. And already it has shown a good CAGR. Like from 2021 to 2028, it's like cumulative. If you are into these statistics, it's like 20% growth, right? And, you know, they are projecting that. And already, like, it is from 2021. If I get the historical data, uh, business trends, okay, global. I should get something into the images. Let me just check that. If I have something for the images, let me use Google for it. Hmm. Yeah, this one. This one is very, I think, a widely used infographics. So you can see, right, in 2019 it was around 4 billion already, right? And it is projecting to go, more than 17 billion by 2026. And you know, um, what I can tell you here is that at first, uh, everyone did not wanted to move into DevOps because something is new. It could be rather than it being a cutting edge technology. It could be a bleeding edge technologies for early movers, right? Like you might have to spend a lot of energy and resources into researching stuff and doing some R&D. And this R&D, maybe not everyone has those deep pockets, right? So maybe this R&D could have been done by the early adopters and with companies with the big pockets, like Apple, Google, like the fan companies, right? So they went into that. They basically accumulated the benefits out of DevOps, and then based on that, even the SME segment is moving towards it. Why? Because they could see that if big players are doing it, already the community is made there. We can also move into it, and already you have these public cloud segments which are also advocating the DevOps way, and you have this BFSI segment also going into the DevOps. Why? Because what is BFSI? If you people are not aware of this, BFSI is your banking, financial, and insurance firms. Okay, be like financial services and insurance. So like banks have a huge money, your money, my money, everyone's money. And if they are thinking about moving into DevOps, definitely they are going to put a lot of money, like whatever the money they have it in their ecosystem, they are going to put that. And with the launching of this public cloud segments, right? Uh, like the cloud is about pay as you go rather than actually having 10 servers upfront. You need not buy servers now. Okay, you need not go to IT store or some dealer and get IT related infrastructure at your on premise in your warehouse. It's like you can rely on cloud providers like AWS, GCP. I'm just talking about the big ones, GCP and Azure. There are many, but I'm just pointing out these three. So you can rely on that. Okay, if I need two machines, okay, I'll just go and get it running on the AWS, right? So AWS have their own uh, you know data warehouses, you can say, where they can launch these machines for you and can provide you accesses. You can deploy your production grade uh, workloads here and you are done. And if you don't need, let's say later tomorrow you need more, you just request and then you don't have to tell that upfront that I would be needing three, and you don't have to buy. It's like, okay, for 1 year you used it and later you feel like I don't want these three machines, so if you don't want to use this, fine, you can get rid of this. So this is how this cloud early, even the cloud providers are enabling the DevOps way, where you can go the agile way, right? Rather than planning for the servers upfront, if you feel like there are server requirements coming in, you have these, cloud providers which will help you. So yeah, and and you can see that AWS has already put two uh, they already have two data centers or cloud centers in India. Okay, so and they are moving fast. If I talk about AWS regions in India, So recently they have launched in Hyderabad as well. Uh, so Hyderabad and Mumbai. But if I just talk about AWS regions, I'm just taking an example. You can always relate it with GCP and Azure. So you have these North America, and like there are some coming soons as well, right? So if I talk about the overview, so they have launched these two here, but they have one coming in Israel and one coming in Thailand, Singapore. So they are ever expanding, and understand that earlier the BFSI in India was not able to move into uh, the cloud. Why? I'll just close these. They were not able to move into the cloud. Why? Because RBI has some guidelines which says the data which is of India should reside in India. So earlier, when we didn't have these data centers or cloud centers in India, it was hard for a bank, right, Indian bank, to actually launch the production sites or workloads on AWS. But then, as we see Mumbai, Hyderabad region coming in, and the data centers are residing, the physical, hardware is inside the India, so they are able to adopt cloud. And once you adopt cloud, it's very easy to move into the DevOps solutions. So that is all for today, and definitely will whatever I have, don't be just worried. Like I have talked about Kubernetes, I have talked about bits about cloud platforms, right? And I have even shown you some infographics of DevOps. Don't be worried, we'll come across it. It just today's session is just the intro. So that is why I'm showing you why all these things are happening right now, why all buzzwords are happening right now and not 20 years before. And things are moving very fast into DevOps space. So make sure that you keep yourself updated, because many times it would happen during the session that I might tell you that something is introduced in this particular tool, but then after 6 months, if you go and work on your in some company, you might feel like, oh, but Sagar told that this was not like there was a tool, but it did not have this feature. But now it has it. Definitely, it will happen. Earlier, if you talked with me 5 years ago, I would have told that there is no, AWS region inside India. So that is why the banks are not able to adopt AWS. But now it's fairly easy, right? And that is why you can have those DevOps tools also coming into the picture. And that is why this all DevOps space, the cloud space, and in general IT space is ever evolving. You can see now AI and crypto, Web3 coming into the picture. So keep sure that you are always updated. And if you are not always updated, no problem. I stay always updated. You can always go and check my you know seminars or webinars or this recordings. I will keep it updated so that you get the updated information. Okay, good. I think that's all for today, and meet you in the next class. Bye bye. If you have any questions, you can put it in the chat. I can discuss more. If not, then yeah, that's all for today. Thanks for joining in.